Hello, everyone. My name is Emma, and I'm 16 years old. Recently, we lost our home because of my dad, and then my brother and I had to live in horrible conditions. But then I did a terrible thing to get us back to a normal life, and I have no regrets about it. There were always arguments in our family because of my dad's hobby. He used to play poker, and he would come home late to report the bad news that he had lost really often. After that, he would have a fight with my mom and then stop playing for a while, but then he'd go back to the game again. At this point, it probably wasn't a hobby any longer. It was an addiction. But no one could influence my dad. Not me, not my mom, not even the fact that my little brother was only 5 and needed attention. But my father wasn't worried about all that. We didn't have much money at the time, so my mother had to work really hard. From the age of 16, I also found a part-time job so I could at least have some pocket money and also try to help my family. Basically, I spent my happy high school years not partying with friends or going out with boys, but working. And I have to say, there were some good moments. Because of my dad's passion, he was good at math and probably theory, which meant I always had an A in math because he sometimes took the time to study with me. In addition, he taught me to understand human emotions. This skill was useful, and not just for playing poker. I almost always understood when my classmates were lying or hiding something. So this was our life, short intervals of happiness between Dad's games. After one event, we realized that my dad's passion had completely crossed the line. My mom was working late that evening, and I was at work too. So my dad was supposed to be looking after my little brother. But when I got home from work, I found out they weren't home. I started to call my dad, but he had turned off his phone. Soon after I got back, my mom arrived, and they still weren't home yet. It was almost midnight, and we were about to call the police. But finally, we heard the sound of a car approaching the house. It was my dad. My little brother was asleep in his arms. It turns out that my dad had taken him to a game. Unbelievable! Why would he even think to do that? A 5-year-old child was sitting somewhere in a basement with a bunch of smoking and drinking men. Who knows what they might have done to him? Dad must have lost his mind. After that, he and my mother had a very serious fight, and Dad gave up poker for a long time. But an addiction is not that easy to get rid of. One day he came back from another game, and his words literally froze the blood in our veins. Dad said he had lost our house. He tried to explain everything and justify himself. He said that the stakes were high, but he was sure he would win. But the bet didn't pay off. I didn't know what to do, and I just looked at my mom and waited for her reaction. I thought there was going to be another fight, but my mom's reaction was much stronger. She started screaming like never before. She was yelling so intensely that she lost her voice. But suddenly she said she was feeling bad. Mom got flushed all over and said she was having trouble breathing. I quickly called an ambulance, and my mother was taken to the hospital. She had a nervous breakdown due to severe stress. We had never faced this many problems all at once. So Mom was at the hospital. I couldn't be with her because I had to look after my brother, and Dad was packing our stuff because we had to leave the house. From that moment on, we began to live in a small, cheap apartment, and I had to do all the housework, cooking, cleaning, and taking care of my little brother. He cried all the time because he missed our mother, but she wasn't going to be released from the hospital anytime soon. She became an insomniac and totally neurotic after her nervous breakdown, and doctors said she needed to stay in the hospital so they could look after her. At this time, things in our new home were getting worse and worse. Now no one could stop Dad from playing poker. Every day he would come back late at night. He was constantly drunk, and who knows how much money he lost during this time. But he kept saying, "Soon I'll win it back. I'll get our house back." But I wasn't optimistic about it. Plus, he'd never been to the hospital to see my mom. I was almost sure he didn't give a damn about his family. And soon, I was convinced of this fact. Because I was the only one who was looking after my brother, I had to quit my job. So we had no money at all. I spent my savings on food so we wouldn't starve to death, and the worst part was that we had nowhere to turn for help. I didn't know any relatives, and if I went to the police or social services, we would have been given up for adoption to another family. I mean, My dad was clearly addicted. He would have been easily deprived of parental rights, and we would have been taken from him, and my mother was in the hospital with mental problems. She would have been incapacitated too. Who knows what would happen to us if we were put with a completely unfamiliar family? One day, he brought a woman home. He didn't say it directly, but it was clear that they were having an affair. She then became a frequent guest in our house, but she didn't care about us or our house. The only thing she discussed with my dad was poker. He probably met her at one of those underground casinos. You could tell by the way she looked. Worn clothes, tired eyes from sleepless nights, plus she obviously drank a lot. This is what ordinary players who lose family money in the game looked like, so I didn't expect any good from her, because I already knew how dangerous gambling was. And not just because you can lose a lot of money, no, because most of the players are criminals, and they are willing to go to great lengths for the money. You should be afraid of people like this and stay away from them. But unfortunately, my dad had gotten himself all wrapped up with them. A week later, he came home very scared. He told us to pack our stuff quickly and said that we had to leave. I quickly packed everything. We got into the car and drove in an unknown direction. When my dad calmed down a bit, he admitted that he had lost again, and this time he didn't have the money to pay. Most likely people were on their way to our house, and it is unknown what they would do to us. Oh, gosh. Thank God my brother was sleeping and didn't hear the whole story. This was terrible. Dad was drowning in debt and his addiction, and he was dragging us down with him. I didn't have the strength to deal with it, and I just cried and hoped that my mom would recover faster and that she would end it. Soon we arrived at an unfamiliar house, and my father said that we were going to stay here for a while. It was his girlfriend's house, and the conditions were terrible. Of course, there was no children's room, and my brother and I had to live in the attic. We tried to sort through all the rubble of different things up there and made ourselves something like a bedroom. Of course, it was terrible. A couple of mattresses, a desk lamp, and a small window that didn't even let in any sunlight. I tried to find something positive to cheer myself and my brother up, but it was impossible. We were on our own. We were just two kids that nobody cared about. Meanwhile, Dad and his girlfriend drank all the time. In the evenings, a lot of strange people came to the house, and they all played poker until the morning. Then my dad would sleep all day, and the next evening everything started all over again. And I had to clean up the after effects from the night so my brother wouldn't see this horror. During those few weeks, I was only able to visit my mother a couple of times. The doctors said she needed good news to cheer her up, but I didn't have any of that. I could barely stop myself from crying and telling her about our living conditions now. I didn't know what to do with our lives, but thankfully, luck was on my side. One night, during another poker party, people were screaming pretty loud. The screams and music didn't stop until the next morning, and I was afraid to go downstairs. What if something terrible happened down there? I finally overcame my fear and went down. The whole house was littered with bottles and shards of glass. Garbage was everywhere. It looked like they weren't just playing yesterday, but they were having some kind of wild party. Finally, I saw my dad lying on the couch. He was sleeping very soundly. I wanted to wake him up. Then I saw it. A backpack that was stuffed with bundles of money was lying next to him. You know, everything I did next was instinctive. I realized that about an hour later. So I took this backpack and quickly returned to my brother. We once again packed our stuff and left this horrible place before everyone woke up. I thought that when my father discovered that the bag was missing, he would think it was one of yesterday's guests. You know, those people looked like any one of them could have stolen the money. We went to Mom's hospital. She was getting better, and we had great news for her. With this money, we could get our house back and start a new life, only without our father, who was poisoning our family. After that, my mother got better much faster. When she was discharged from the hospital, we started looking for a new home. Mom suggested that we move to another city. I gladly agreed because I wanted to forget the events of the last month like they were a nightmare. I've only seen my dad once since then, and he was only interested in money. He asked me if I had taken it, but I managed to lie to him, looking him right in his eyes. I know stealing is bad, and I know I shouldn't have done it, but I don't regret it. He deserved to be punished after all the damage he had done to us. I have to admit, he did manage to win it all back, but he did it too late. He lost everything on the way to that money, and family and loved ones are not something you can win at a poker match. Thanks for watching, guys. Have you or your parents ever experienced addiction? How did you manage to get through it? Let me know in the comments, and be sure to share this story with your friends. Friends.